Michael was coming home from his part-time job, a backpack slung over his shoulder, feeling the weight of exhaustion from a long day at school and work. But despite the tiredness, he always had a sense of relief when walking towards the small apartment he shared with his mom. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. As he reached the front door and fumbled with the keys, something felt wrong. The lights were off, and it was too quiet. His mom usually left at least one light on in the kitchen, but tonight, there was nothing. The air felt heavy. "Mom." Michael called out as he stepped inside. No response. He dropped his backpack by the door and moved quickly through the small apartment, a knot forming in his stomach. "Mom," he called again, louder this time. He reached her bedroom and froze in the doorway. His mother was lying on the bed, her eyes closed, perfectly still. At first, he thought she might just be sleeping, but something wasn't right. Her skin looked pale, and the blankets were messily thrown to one side. "Mom," he whispered, stepping closer. His heart raced as he knelt by the bed, gently shaking her shoulder. She didn't stir. Panic surged through him as he shook her harder. "Mom. Mom, wake up. Please." But she didn't wake up. His hands were trembling as he pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his voice cracking as he tried to explain what was happening. The minutes that followed felt like hours. Paramedics arrived, but Michael already knew. The look in their eyes confirmed his worst fear. His mother had passed away from a heart condition she had never told him about. She didn't want him to worry, didn't want to burden him with more than he was already carrying. She had tried to protect him, even at the cost of her own life. Michael sat in silence as the paramedics left, his world collapsing around him. In the days that followed, everything became a blur. The landlord knocked on the door with the news that the apartment had to be vacated by the end of the month. Michael had no savings, no other family to turn to. He went to school, pretending things were normal, but each night he returned to an empty apartment. The space that had once been his home now felt cold and foreign. The clock was ticking, and he knew it. The last few days in the apartment were a countdown to nowhere. By the end of the week, Michael was homeless. On his final night in the apartment, he sat in the living room, the few belongings he had packed up in boxes around him. The silence was deafening. He thought about everything his mother had done to keep him going, and how she had tried so hard to shield him from the harsh realities of life. But now, those realities were all he had. As the sun rose the next morning, Michael left the apartment with nothing but a duffel bag and the clothes on his back. The door clicked shut behind him, and just like that, everything he had known was gone. He wandered the streets for hours, not knowing where to go, or what to do next. His heart was heavy with grief, but more than anything, a deep sinking fear took hold. He was 17, alone, and had no idea how to survive. By the end of the day, he found himself sitting on a park bench, watching the world move around him. People passed by, oblivious to the storm that was raging inside him. Michael felt invisible, like a ghost in a city that didn't care. But as the day faded into night, something inside him stirred. He thought of his mother's voice, the way she always told him he was meant for something greater, that no matter how hard life got, he had to keep pushing forward. Those words echoed in his mind as he sat there in the dark, unsure of what the future held, but knowing one thing for sure, he couldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. Michael wandered the city streets for what felt like hours, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The duffel bag slung over his shoulder weighed heavy, but not nearly as much as the thoughts racing through his mind. With each step, the reality of his situation sank in deeper. Homeless, alone, and grieving for the one person who had always been there for him, his mother. The city seemed to pulse with life around him, but Michael felt like a ghost walking through it. He passed groups of people laughing as they walked down the street, couples holding hands, and businessmen rushing from place to place. All of them had a purpose, a direction, somewhere to be. But for Michael, there was no such comfort. He didn't belong anywhere anymore. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the pavement, the temperature dropped sharply. Michael pulled his jacket tighter around him, but it did little to shield him from the cold. He kept walking, his feet aching and his stomach growling. He hadn't eaten since yesterday, but finding food was the least of his worries. More than anything, he needed to find a safe place to sleep. But where? He wandered into an area of the city he had never been to before, the buildings becoming older and more run-down. The streets were littered with trash, and the occasional figure would emerge from the shadows, eyeing him suspiciously. Michael felt a shiver run down his spine, but he kept moving, trying to avoid eye contact. After what felt like hours of walking, he stumbled upon a small park nestled between two dilapidated buildings. It wasn't much, but at least it was quieter here. Michael scanned the area and noticed a group of homeless people huddled around a bench on the far side of the park. They had makeshift shelters made of cardboard and blankets, and one of them was lighting a small fire inside a tin can to keep warm. Michael hesitated. He didn't want to admit it, but these people were now like him. They had nowhere to go, no place to call home. A part of him wanted to approach them, to ask for help, or at least advice. But another part of him was afraid. What if they didn't accept him? What if they saw him as an outsider? He was still just a teenager after all, and he wasn't sure how to survive on the streets. As he stood there, contemplating, an older man from the group caught his eye. The man looked worn, with a scraggly beard and a weathered face, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of kindness, or maybe just understanding. The man gave Michael a small nod, as if to say it was okay. Michael took a deep breath and slowly walked toward the group. When he reached them, the older man spoke first. "You look lost, kid." Michael didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to asking for help, but he couldn't deny it any longer. He was lost. I don't know where to go," Michael stammered. The man gestured for him to sit down by the fire. "You're in the right place then. We've all been there." Michael sat, feeling the warmth of the fire on his hands. He looked around at the others. They were a mix of men and women, all ages, all wearing the same tired expressions. Some were staring blankly at the fire, others at the ground. A woman next to him offered a small smile, and he managed to return it, though his heart felt heavy. "How long have you been out here?" Michael asked quietly. The man shrugged. "Long enough. But it's not so bad once you get used to it. You learn where to go, how to stay safe. Stick with us tonight, and you'll be fine." The warmth of the fire provided a small comfort as Michael listened to the stories shared among the group. They spoke of their pasts. Some had families that abandoned them, others had lost everything to addiction or mental health issues. Each tale was a reminder of the fragility of life and the harsh realities that led them to this point. Michael felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the struggles they faced, but relief that he was not alone in his suffering. As night deepened, Michael's mind drifted. He thought about his mother and the life he had before everything changed. He remembered their evenings spent cooking together, laughing over burnt meals, and how she always encouraged him to follow his dreams. Her voice echoed in his mind, urging him to be strong. But as he sat there, surrounded by strangers, doubt began to creep in. How could he possibly find a way out of this situation? The world felt so vast and unforgiving, and he was just one small lost boy. Eventually, the conversation dwindled, and the group settled into a quiet lull. Michael found a spot under a nearby tree and lay down, using his duffel bag as a pillow. The ground was hard, and the cold air bit at his skin, but exhaustion finally took over, and he fell into a restless sleep. In his dreams, he was back home, sitting at the kitchen table with his mom. She was laughing, the sound of her voice filling the room with warmth. She handed him a plate of his favorite food, her eyes twinkling with pride. "You're going to do great things, Michael," she said softly. "You're stronger than you know." But then, the warmth faded. The kitchen dissolved around him, and he was back on the cold streets, his mother's voice growing distant. "Don't give up, Michael," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't give up." Michael woke with a start, the early morning light filtering through the trees. For a moment, he didn't know where he was, but the harsh reality quickly came flooding back. He was still here, still alone, but his mother's words echoed in his mind. "Don't give up." Michael sat up, rubbing his eyes and taking a deep breath. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: he couldn't let himself give up. Not yet. He looked around at the group still sleeping, feeling a spark of determination igniting within him. He had to find a way to survive, to rebuild his life. Perhaps the streets held lessons he needed to learn, and maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to turn this despair into something meaningful. With newfound resolve, Michael decided he would start talking to the people around him, sharing his story and learning from theirs. There was power in connection, in understanding each other's pain, and perhaps in sharing their struggles, they could all find a glimmer of hope to carry them through the darkness. As dawn broke over the city, Michael rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the chill of the morning air biting at his skin. The park was still quiet, save for the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze and the distant sounds of the city waking up. He sat up, taking in the sight of the small group of homeless individuals that had shared their warmth and stories with him the night before. Each face told a story, marked by resilience and hardship. Despite their circumstances, there was a sense of camaraderie that made him feel slightly less alone. After gathering his belongings, Michael approached the group, eager to engage and learn more about their lives. He felt a strange mixture of nerves and excitement. These were people who understood suffering, who had faced the harsh realities of life head-on, much like he was trying to do. The older man from the night before noticed him and waved him over. "Mornin', kid," he greeted, his voice raspy but warm. "You sleep all right?" Michael nodded, still feeling the remnants of his dreams linger in his mind. "Yeah, better than I expected," he replied, taking a seat on the bench next to the man. I don't know what to do next." The man chuckled softly, the sound inviting and reassuring. "None of us do, kid. That's the thing about this life. You wake up every day and figure it out as you go. But we're here for each other, and that makes it a bit easier." Michael's heart swelled at those words. Community. It was something he had longed for, a connection in the midst of his overwhelming grief. The woman sitting nearby joined the conversation, her hair unkempt and her eyes reflecting a depth of experience. "I'm Grace," she introduced herself with a slight smile. "We're all just trying to survive. It's not easy, but we find ways." She spoke with a strength that Michael admired. "How long have you all been out here?" he asked, curiosity piqued. Grace glanced at the others before responding. "I've been here for about a year. Lost my job and then my apartment. It spiraled from there. But I've found a family in this group. We look out for each other." Michael felt a pang of sadness for her, realizing how easily life could turn upside down. "What about the rest of you?" he prompted, wanting to hear their stories. One by one, they began to share. The man who had greeted Michael first was named Sam. He had been on the streets for over 2 years, struggling with addiction after losing his wife to cancer. "I thought I could handle it," he admitted, his eyes clouded with regret. "But I got lost in my pain. I'm working on getting clean now, one day at a time." Another man, Alex, shared his tale of how he had been laid off during the pandemic and found himself living in his car before it broke down. "It's hard not to feel hopeless sometimes," he confessed. "But I keep pushing. I have to believe there's a way out." As they spoke, Michael felt a shift within himself. The weight of his own grief was still present, but hearing their stories helped him realize he wasn't alone in his struggles. Each of these individuals had faced their own battles, yet they were all here, fighting for a better tomorrow. Michael listened intently, taking mental notes of their experiences and how they managed to cope. He began to see their resilience as a source of inspiration. After a while, Sam suggested they should all go to a nearby shelter for breakfast. They serve decent meals and it's a good place to connect with more people. "You're welcome to join us, Michael." The invitation felt like a lifeline, and without hesitation, he agreed. Together, they gathered their belongings and headed toward the shelter, their footsteps echoing on the pavement. As they walked, Michael noticed the contrast between the warmth of their small group and the coldness of the world around them. People passed by, often glancing at them with either indifference or curiosity. He felt exposed, but at the same time, he was beginning to understand the strength in vulnerability. He had always been the type to hide his emotions, but now, being with this group was teaching him that sharing his story could lead to healing. Upon reaching the shelter, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon greeted them. Michael's stomach growled in response, reminding him of how long it had been since he had a proper meal. Inside, the atmosphere was bustling. People chatted, laughed, and shared their stories. Michael felt a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. They joined the line for food, and as they waited, Sam struck up a conversation with a woman who was serving breakfast. "Hey, Maria. Good to see you," he said, his tone cheerful. Michael watched as the two exchanged friendly banter. Sam introduced Michael, explaining that he was new to the area and just starting his journey. Maria smiled warmly, welcoming him with open arms. "You'll find your way, kid. Just keep your head up and lean on your friends," she advised, serving them generous portions of food. As they sat down to eat, Michael looked around at his new friends, feeling grateful for their companionship. They shared stories over breakfast, laughter filling the air. For the first time since his mother's passing, he felt a glimmer of hope. There was something powerful about being part of a community, of finding people who understood his struggles and supported him. When they finished eating, Sam suggested they play a game of cards to pass the time. "It's a great way to bond and take our minds off things," he said, pulling out a worn deck of cards from his bag. They gathered around a table, and Michael felt his heart lift as they laughed and teased each other. The camaraderie was infectious, and he found himself enjoying the moment, forgetting for a while the weight of his grief. As the afternoon wore on, Michael realized he had spent hours with this group. They were sharing not only laughter, but also their dreams and fears. He found himself opening up about his past, about his mother and the life they shared. The others listened intently, offering words of encouragement and understanding. It felt good to talk about her, to share the memories that he had been holding onto so tightly. But the joy of the day was tinged with an underlying fear. Michael knew that this was only the beginning of his journey. He had much to face and learn, and the weight of his loss still lingered. Yet, surrounded by this group of resilient individuals, he felt empowered to take the next step. He was beginning to see that while he couldn't change the past, he could shape his future. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the shelter, Michael looked around at his newfound friends. They were all in different stages of their struggles, but together, they formed a tapestry of resilience. He felt a spark of determination ignite within him. This was not just about surviving, it was about learning to thrive, to rebuild, and to find a sense of purpose again. The night wrapped around them like a comforting blanket as they left the shelter, laughter still echoing in the air. Michael knew he had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a while, he felt a sense of hope. He had found a community, a group of people who understood, and in their shared struggles, he saw the possibility of his own redemption. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue over the city, Tomas found himself standing at a bustling intersection. The streets buzzed with life, cars zoomed by, people hurried along the sidewalks, and the distant sounds of laughter and music filled the air. Despite the vibrant atmosphere around him, Tomas felt an immense weight pressing down on his shoulders. The uncertainty of his future loomed heavily in his mind, intertwining with the emotions he had been grappling with since he had left the shelter. Feeling restless, he decided to wander into a nearby park. As he strolled along the pathways lined with blooming flowers, he tried to quiet his racing thoughts. Each step echoed in his mind, punctuated by the sounds of children playing and families gathering for evening picnics. The beauty of the park contrasted sharply with his inner turmoil. He watched as kids raced each other, their laughter ringing out like a melody that momentarily lifted his spirits. Yet, beneath the surface, he was wrestling with a life-altering decision. Earlier that day, Tomas received a call from Javier, an old friend from his past. They had once been partners in a small business venture before life took them down different paths. Javier's voice was filled with excitement as he pitched the idea of a new startup he was launching, offering Tomas a chance to be part of something big. "It's a great opportunity, Tomas. We could make a real impact," he had said, his enthusiasm contagious. But as Tomas listened, he felt a familiar twinge of anxiety. "Can I truly handle this?" Tomas thought, his mind racing. "What if I fail again? What if I can't keep up with the demands?" His past experiences haunted him, whispering doubts into his ear. Memories of struggles and setbacks surged to the forefront of his mind, causing his heart to race. In the park, he found a bench and sat down, allowing the cool evening breeze to wash over him. Closing his eyes, he tried to visualize a future filled with success and stability. Instead, he was met with images of his fears, failing once more, disappointing his loved ones, and returning to a life of uncertainty. Just then, an elderly man approached and sat down next to him, sensing the unease radiating from Tomas. With a gentle smile, the man struck up a conversation. "You seem troubled, young man. Care to share what's on your mind?" Tomas hesitated, unsure if he wanted to burden a stranger with his worries. But something about the man's warm demeanor encouraged him to open up. "I'm just trying to figure out my next move," Tomas admitted. "I received a job offer from an old friend, but I'm scared to take the leap." The man nodded thoughtfully, his wise eyes sparkling with understanding. The fear of failure can be paralyzing. But you know, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest rewards. What's the worst that could happen?" Tomas pondered the question, feeling a mix of emotions. "I could fail again," he replied, his voice heavy with doubt. "Or you could succeed beyond your wildest dreams," the man countered, a knowing smile on his face. "You'll never know unless you try. Life is all about taking risks. Remember, the road to success is often paved with failures. The words struck a chord within Tomas, resonating deep in his heart. He thought about the shelter residents, how they had come together through their struggles, lifting each other up in their darkest moments. Their resilience inspired him to confront his fears head-on. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, casting shadows over the park, Tomas felt a sense of determination building within him. He took a deep breath, inhaling the cool evening air mixed with the scent of blooming flowers. It was time to take charge of his life, to embrace the uncertainty that lay ahead. The next morning, with his heart pounding in anticipation and anxiety, Tomas dialed Javier's number. He paced back and forth in his small apartment, replaying the conversation in his mind. What if I regret this, he thought, a flicker of fear surfacing. When Javier answered, Tomas took a moment to gather his thoughts. I'm in, he said finally, his voice steady and filled with resolve. Let's do this. Relief washed over him, a wave of liberation replacing the weight of indecision. It wasn't just about the opportunity with Javier, it was about reclaiming his life and stepping boldly into the unknown. As he hung up the phone, he felt lighter, the burdens he had carried for so long starting to lift. With newfound purpose, Tomas made his way to the shelter, eager to share his decision with the friends he had grown close to. He arrived just as the residents were gathering for their morning meal. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and camaraderie, a stark reminder of the support system he had found within those walls. Hey everyone, he called out, catching their attention. I have some news to share. The room quieted as all eyes turned to him, a mix of curiosity and encouragement in their expressions. I've decided to join a startup with an old friend. It's a big step for me, and I want to thank all of you for the support you've given me. You've helped me believe in myself again. The residents erupted in applause, their cheers filling the room with warmth and affirmation. Tomas felt a surge of gratitude as he looked around at the faces of those who had inspired him to push through his doubts. Their collective strength reminded him that he was not alone in his journey. As the morning unfolded, Tomas felt a sense of excitement bubbling within him. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge that he had a community of supporters cheering him on. With each passing day, he knew he was one step closer to creating the life he envisioned. The following weeks were a whirlwind for Tomas. Each morning, he woke up with a sense of purpose and anticipation. The excitement of joining Javier's startup filled his days with energy, and he found himself embracing the daily challenges that came with it. However, as the novelty began to fade, the reality of the situation started to sink in. The startup was in its infancy, and the pressure was palpable. Tomas quickly learned that they were working against tight deadlines and limited resources. He spent long hours in a small office, surrounded by a team of passionate individuals, all driven by the same goal, to make their vision a reality. Each day presented a new set of problems to solve, and the stress began to build. One afternoon, while reviewing a crucial presentation for an upcoming investor meeting, Tomas felt the weight of uncertainty creeping back in. Doubts that he had tried to suppress began to bubble up. What if I'm not cut out for this, he thought, his heart racing. What if I let everyone down? The voices of his past failures echoed in his mind, intensifying his anxiety. His friend Javier, sensing the shift in Tomas's demeanor, called for a team meeting to boost morale. They gathered around a table cluttered with coffee cups and notepads, the atmosphere heavy with tension. Javier opened the meeting with an enthusiastic speech about the progress they had made, his voice ringing with conviction. We're on the brink of something big, everyone. We just need to push through this rough patch. Tomas listened intently as Javier spoke, but doubt still gnawed at him. He recalled the first time they pitched their idea to a potential investor and how he had stumbled over his words. It had felt like a disaster, and the memory haunted him. He couldn't help but wonder if he was the weak link in the chain, dragging the team down. As the meeting progressed, Tomas found himself lost in thought, his mind racing with negative scenarios. After the meeting, he stepped outside to clear his head. The cool evening air enveloped him, but the worries swirled in his mind. Suddenly, he spotted a small cafe across the street, its warm lights beckoning him. He decided to grab a coffee, hoping a moment of solitude would help him regain focus. Inside the cafe, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped him, creating a stark contrast to the tension he felt. He ordered a cappuccino and settled into a cozy corner. As he sipped his drink, he observed the people around him. Couples laughed over dessert, friends chatted animatedly, and a musician strummed a guitar softly in the corner. The atmosphere was vibrant, yet he felt isolated within his thoughts. Just as he was about to drown in self-doubt, his phone buzzed with a message from Maria, a fellow team member. "Hey, I believe in you, Tomas. Let's tackle this presentation together. We've got this." Her words were a balm to his soul, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this journey. He quickly replied, feeling a surge of gratitude for the support he had found among his colleagues. Inspired by Maria's encouragement, Tomas returned to the office with renewed determination. They spent the next few days working late into the night, perfecting their pitch. The camaraderie among the team grew stronger as they collaborated, sharing ideas and pushing each other to excel. Laughter echoed through the office as they navigated the challenges together, transforming anxiety into excitement. On the day of the presentation, Tomas awoke with butterflies in his stomach. He dressed in his best shirt, adjusting his tie nervously in the mirror. "You can do this," he muttered to himself, trying to muster confidence. He arrived at the venue early, the bright lights of the conference room reflecting off the polished tables. His team gathered, their faces a mix of anticipation and anxiety. As the time for their presentation approached, Tomas felt his heart racing. He took a moment to step outside and breathe deeply. The fresh air calmed his nerves as he remembered Javier's words. "We're on the brink of something big." With a newfound sense of determination, he re-entered the room, ready to face the challenge head-on. When they stepped up to present, Tomas found his voice. He spoke passionately about their vision, the challenges they had overcome, and the impact their startup could have on the community. The audience responded positively, nodding in agreement and leaning forward in their seats. Tomas felt a rush of exhilaration as he realized he was no longer afraid. As they concluded the presentation, the applause that erupted from the audience filled him with pride. They had done it together, as a team. In that moment, Tomas understood the power of vulnerability and connection. His journey of overcoming self-doubt was far from over, but he felt a sense of progress that propelled him forward. Later, when they received feedback from the investors, the atmosphere in the office was electric. They had captured the investors' interest, and a follow-up meeting was scheduled. The team celebrated, laughter and cheers filling the air. Tomas couldn't help but smile. He had faced his fears and emerged stronger, fueled by the support of those around him. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the city, Tomas knew this was just the beginning. With every challenge, he was becoming more resilient, more capable, and more determined to forge his path. And as he looked around at his team, he realized they were all in this together, united by a shared dream and the unwavering belief that they could overcome anything. The days following the successful presentation were filled with a newfound sense of energy and optimism within the team. Tomas felt the weight of his self-doubt lifting as he immersed himself in the momentum they had built. The prospect of turning their vision into reality was exhilarating, but the excitement also came with its own set of challenges. As they prepared for the follow-up meeting with the investors, tensions began to rise. The stakes were higher now, and everyone was determined to impress. Tomas took on more responsibilities, diving into market research and refining their business strategy. He spent hours analyzing data, making sure every detail was perfect. But as the pressure mounted, so did the fear of failure. One evening, as the team gathered in the office, Javier called for a meeting to discuss their progress. The room was buzzing with ideas, but Tomas could sense an underlying anxiety among his colleagues. They all knew that the next meeting with the investors would determine the fate of their startup. Everyone wanted to ensure they were well prepared. "Okay, team, let's focus on our strengths," Javier began, his voice steady. "We have a unique product and a strong vision. But we need to make sure we're addressing the investors' concerns directly. We need to anticipate their questions and prepare our responses." Tomas listened intently, trying to shake off the nagging fear that gripped him. As they went through the feedback from the last meeting, he felt the tension in the room. It was palpable, like electricity in the air. Each critique was dissected, and suggestions were thrown around like confetti. But in the midst of the brainstorming, Tomas felt his confidence wavering once more. What if they hadn't addressed the investors' concerns adequately? What if they faltered under pressure? As the meeting continued, Tomas tried to contribute, but his voice felt small amidst the collective anxiety. He glanced around the room, noticing the strain on his teammates' faces. Everyone was eager to succeed, but the fear of failure loomed large. He realized he needed to do something to turn the tide of their collective mindset. "Can we take a moment?" Tomas interrupted, surprising even himself. "I think we need to remember why we started this journey. We believed in this idea, and we believed in each other. Let's not lose sight of that. The room fell silent. Javier looked at Tomas, a spark of understanding in his eyes. You're right. We've come this far because we trust our vision and each other. Let's focus on that. Let's visualize success together. As the team shared their visions of success, a sense of camaraderie began to replace the anxiety. They envisioned themselves celebrating after a successful meeting, high-fiving each other, and sharing their dreams for the future. The energy shifted in the room, laughter began to replace the tension, and excitement began to seep back into their discussions. Tomas felt a surge of motivation. They spent the rest of the evening preparing for the meeting, creating a more cohesive presentation that highlighted their strengths while addressing the investors' concerns directly. The atmosphere was charged with positivity, and he felt an unshakable bond forming among the team. However, just as they began to feel confident, a new challenge emerged. Late one night, as Tomas was putting the finishing touches on their presentation, he received a phone call from Javier. Tomas, we've hit a snag. One of our key partners has pulled out. They're not willing to invest anymore. Javier's voice was strained with worry. Tomas's heart sank. What does this mean for us? He asked, dreading the answer. It means we need to revise our pitch. The investors will want to know how we plan to move forward without them. It's a setback, but we can't let it define us, Javier replied, his determination shining through the worry. In that moment, Tomas felt the familiar grip of anxiety tightening around him. He could almost hear the whispers of doubt creeping back in. What if this is the end for us? What if we can't recover from this? The thoughts raced through his mind like a whirlwind. But as he looked at the team gathered around him, their faces a mix of concern and determination, something shifted within him. They had faced challenges before, and they had emerged stronger. This was just another obstacle to overcome. Let's regroup and brainstorm solutions, Tomas said, his voice steadier than he felt. We've dealt with challenges before, and we can do it again. We need to be honest with the investors about what happened, but we also need to show them our plan moving forward. The team nodded in agreement, and together they dove into problem-solving mode. They stayed up late into the night, crafting a revised presentation that included alternative strategies and contingency plans. Each idea sparked new energy and determination, and slowly but surely, Tomas felt the anxiety fade. As the meeting day approached, the team rallied together, united by their shared vision and the knowledge that they were capable of overcoming this setback. The morning of the presentation arrived, and Tomas stood before his team, feeling a sense of purpose wash over him. You all have worked so hard, and I believe in each one of you, he said, looking around the room. No matter what happens today, we've already proven that we can adapt and grow. Let's show the investors that we are resilient and ready to take on any challenge. With renewed determination, they walked into the meeting, ready to face whatever came their way. And as they began their pitch, Tomas felt a fire ignite within him. They were more than a team, they were a family, bound together by a common goal, and together, they would rise to meet the challenge. The day of the presentation arrived, and Tomas felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as he and his team entered the sleek conference room. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, and the long polished table gleamed under the fluorescent lights. A wall of glass revealed the sprawling cityscape beyond, serving as a reminder of the heights they aimed to reach. Tomas looked around at his teammates, Javier, Maria, and Elena. Each one of them wore a determined expression, their nerves masked by a shared sense of purpose. As the investors filed in, Tomas could feel the tension in the air. This was their moment to shine, but it was also the culmination of countless hours of hard work, setbacks, and emotional struggles. Remember, we're not just selling a product, we're sharing a vision, Javier reminded them in a hushed voice. The group nodded, and Tomas felt a surge of resolve wash over him. They had come too far to let fear dictate their performance. The lead investor, a stern-looking woman named Ms. Hart, took her seat at the head of the table. She was known for her no-nonsense approach and keen insight into market trends. Tomas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had read articles about her and her reputation for being tough on startups. Let's get started, Ms. Hart said, her voice authoritative. We're eager to hear what you've prepared. Javier took the lead, presenting their revised strategy with confidence. He spoke passionately about their innovative approach to solving a pressing problem in the industry. Tomas watched as the team members took turns sharing their insights and ideas, the energy in the room building as they delved into the intricacies of their business model. As they showcased their product, the initial skepticism on the investors' faces began to shift. Tomas noticed a spark of interest in Ms. Hart's eyes as she engaged with their presentation. The team was hitting all the right notes, and they were answering questions with clarity and conviction. However, just when Tomas thought they were gaining momentum, one of the other investors, a man with a skeptical demeanor named Mr. Stevens, interjected. Your last partner pulled out, which raises concerns about your reliability. How do you plan to address this moving forward? Tomas's heart sank. The fear of failure that had haunted him returned, and he could see the unease ripple through his team. He could feel Javier stiffen beside him, and he knew this was a crucial moment. If they faltered now, all their hard work could come crashing down. Gathering his thoughts, Tomas decided it was time to take a stand. Mr. Stevens, I understand your concern, he said, his voice steady. But the loss of our previous partner has forced us to rethink our strategy and strengthen our foundations. We have identified new partners who are equally enthusiastic about our mission. This setback has only reinforced our commitment to success. He felt the eyes of the investors on him, and for the first time, he realized that they were not just assessing their business, but also measuring their resilience. He continued, every obstacle we face is an opportunity for growth. We've adapted, and we will continue to adapt to ensure our success. Ms. Hart nodded, intrigued. And what specific steps are you taking to secure these new partnerships? Tomas's heart raced as he outlined their plan to diversify their partnerships and create a robust network. He spoke about their proactive outreach, the feedback they were gathering, and how they were committed to building strong relationships in the industry. As he spoke, Tomas could see his teammates rallying behind him. Javier chimed in with additional insights, and Maria shared their research on potential partners who aligned with their vision. The atmosphere in the room shifted again as they addressed the investors' concerns with a sense of assurance. After the presentation, the investors asked them to step outside while they deliberated. The team huddled together in the waiting area, hearts pounding in their chests. I think we did well, Elena said, her voice filled with hope. We addressed their concerns, and I felt the shift in their energy. Javier nodded, but still looked worried. I just hope it's enough. We've put everything into this. I can't bear the thought of failing now. Tomas placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We've done our best. No matter the outcome, we've grown together, and that's what matters. Just then the door opened, and Ms. Hart gestured for them to return. Tomas felt the familiar knot in his stomach as they walked back into the conference room. The investors were seated, their expressions unreadable. Thank you for your patience, Ms. Hart began, her tone measured. We appreciate the effort you've put into your presentation and the clarity you provided regarding your plans moving forward. We've taken your feedback into consideration. Tomas held his breath as he watched Ms. Hart exchange glances with Mr. Stevens. Then, with a deep breath, she continued, we believe in your vision and are willing to offer you a partnership. The words hung in the air, surreal and almost impossible to comprehend. Tomas blinked, waiting for his mind to catch up with what he had just heard. Javier erupted in excitement, his voice breaking the tension. Are you serious? Ms. Hart smiled for the first time. Yes, but with conditions. We want to see your plans implemented effectively, and we expect regular updates on your progress. Overwhelmed with emotion, Tomas could hardly contain his joy. The team erupted into cheers, and for the first time, he felt the weight of uncertainty lift. They had made it through, together. As they celebrated, Tomas reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had faced setbacks and doubts, but they had emerged stronger and more united than ever. This was just the beginning of their adventure, and he knew that, no matter what lay ahead, they would tackle it together. The following weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Tomas and his team dove into their new partnership with relentless determination. They worked long hours, fueled by the passion that had ignited during their presentation. With every meeting, every brainstorming session, and every late-night email, they forged ahead, eager to turn their vision into reality. As they began implementing their plans, the team faced new challenges. Initial excitement turned into the reality of deadlines, market research, and the inevitable hurdles that came with launching a new product. At times, the pressure felt overwhelming, and doubts crept in again. Tomas often found himself reflecting on those moments of uncertainty they had faced during the presentation. He was reminded that their strength lay in their ability to adapt and support one another. One day, during a particularly intense brainstorming session, Maria expressed her concerns. What if we don't meet our targets? What if we disappoint Ms. Hart and the investors? We've worked so hard, and I can't bear the thought of failing now. Tomas paused, taking a moment to absorb her words. He remembered how far they had come and the power of their collective strength. Look, we've faced setbacks before, and we've always found a way through. Remember when we thought we'd lost everything after our last partner pulled out? We came back stronger because we believed in each other and our mission. This time will be no different. Encouraged by Tomas's words, the team rallied together, recommitting themselves to their goals. They revamped their strategies, reached out to potential partners, and embraced feedback with open arms. With each small victory, their confidence grew. As the launch date approached, excitement and nervousness coalesced into a palpable energy. The day arrived, and they gathered in the same sleek conference room where they had first presented their ideas. This time, however, they were not presenting to investors. They were preparing for a live demonstration of their product to the public. Tomas stood at the front, flanked by his team, feeling a mix of pride and anticipation. The room was filled with eager faces, journalists, influencers, and potential customers who had come to witness their innovation. The air buzzed with excitement, and Tomas could feel the adrenaline coursing through him. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice steady and confident. Today, we're not just launching a product, we're launching a movement. We believe in creating positive change, and we invite you to join us on this journey. As he spoke, he watched the faces in the audience shift from curiosity to intrigue. The team showcased their product with enthusiasm, demonstrating its unique features and benefits. Tomas could feel the energy in the room shift as the crowd began to engage, asking questions and expressing genuine interest. After the demonstration, the team opened the floor for a Q&A session. Questions flowed in, and Tomas felt invigorated by the dialogue. Each interaction reinforced their belief in what they had created. The positive feedback began to pour in, and Tomas saw hope shining in the eyes of his teammates. As the event concluded, they received their first round of orders, and the initial wave of excitement erupted into cheers. Tomas felt a surge of triumph wash over him. They had turned their dreams into reality, and the obstacles they had faced only made the victory sweeter. As the team celebrated their achievement, Tomas took a moment to reflect on their journey. They had not only created a product, but had also built a community around their vision. Their shared experiences had forged unbreakable bonds, and he was filled with gratitude for the support and resilience they had shown one another. In the following weeks, their product gained traction, and their community continued to grow. They received stories from customers who found inspiration in their journey, and the impact they were making began to spread beyond their expectations. Tomas knew that their success was not merely a result of their product, but also a testament to their determination to uplift and inspire others. With each new customer and each new story, he felt the mission of their work solidify further. One evening, as the sun set over the city, painting the sky with vibrant hues, Tomas gathered his team for a reflection. They stood on the rooftop of their office, overlooking the bustling streets below. "Look at how far we've come," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "This is just the beginning. Let's continue to dream big and inspire others to do the same." With renewed vigor, the team raised their glasses in a toast. To resilience, to friendship, and to the journey ahead. As laughter and cheers filled the air, Tomas felt an overwhelming sense of joy. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would continue to inspire, uplift, and empower others, proving that no obstacle was insurmountable when driven by passion and unity.